All righty, so we're welcoming back our good friend Rita Marie Johnson. Her talk today is Deep Healing Through the Power of Connection. And I think everyone's aware of this, but if you are not, of course, Rita Marie and our own Sherry Holland are sisters, for those of you who may not know that fact. So we're certainly glad to have Rita Marie back. A little bit about her. She's an educator. Rita Marie. She's an educator, author, speaker, and award-winning innovator. Rita Marie Johnson has been sharing her method for over 20 years. Her implementation of the connection practice in Costa Rican schools bought her the Ashoka Changemakers Innovation Award. She now has certified more than 250 connection practice coaches. Wow, great number. Reverend Rita Marie initiated a bill for a ministry for peace in Costa Rica, and which passed in the Legislative Assembly in 2009. And she's been a keynote speaker for many, many conferences. So she's definitely a friend of this community. So without further ado, we introduce Rita Marie, and the floor is yours. And thank you for coming back and speaking with us again.
Thank you, Dan. It's always so heartwarming for me to be with all of you. Really appreciate being invited again. So a while back, Susan Breed asked me to bring you all another message about the connection practice. She had just heard me speak on something else, and she wanted me to bring more of that to you all. So I agreed to do that. However, I think most of you have heard me talk about the connection practice. You already know the basics of it. So today I thought I would share the deeper level of the connection practice. I'm going to use an example from my own life that I haven't shared with anybody yet. So all during my life, I've had a challenge with overeating. I, would gain weight, but I'd always find a way to lose it. So it was never terribly obvious to other people. So I always dealt with it in my own way, or different ways, finding different ways to lose weight. So at the same time, I never really thought I had a serious problem. But then about 3 months ago, I was feeling really overwhelmed with the renovation of our global headquarters here in Costa Rica. It's a large property with casitas and an event center and the main house, and just a lot of work had gone on for over 2 years, and we still weren't done. And besides that, we were having growing pains in our global nonprofit. There was so much going on, and I didn't have all of the staff support that I needed. And so anyway, I was just overwhelmed. So one night I couldn't sleep. I was exhausted, but couldn't sleep. I imagine some of you have had that kind of experience in your life. And, I was having all this stuff going on in my head, and I just wanted to escape it. So I got back up out of bed, and I thought, well, I'll read for a little while. That usually helps me to get sleepy. And I thought, well, I'll get something to eat too. That also helps me get sleepy. So I grabbed a book and I went to the refrigerator to get something to eat. And so then I sat down and I read a page out of the book. And by the time I finished that page, I'd finished eating what I'd found. And so, well, gee, now I got to go back to the refrigerator and get a little more. So I went back, got some more food, sat down with my book, read another page. Gosh, I just ate that so fast, I'm going to have to go back and get some more. And so each time I finished a page, I'd go back and get more to eat. And so finally, after eating way too much, I did get sleepy and I went to bed. Well, the next morning, I still felt full from all that food. But my husband makes me breakfast, which is so wonderful. So he made me breakfast, and I started to eat my breakfast. And suddenly I felt like I needed to throw up. I'm sorry to bring that up on a Sunday morning, but I'm making myself vulnerable today for you because you are like family. And so I had to go to the sink and, for that purpose. And I'm going, oh my God, wow, what a huge red flag. What a red flag I've got in my life here. This is not just a problem that we all have with overeating from time to time. This is a real problem. So for the first time, I went to the internet and I started researching binging. And I found a test there that you can take to identify the level of your problem. And so I took that test and I found out that I had a moderate binge eating disorder. And because this was not the first time this had ever happened. And so, wow, that was sure a wake-up call. And I realized now I needed to do my connection practice, which is what I could have done and should have done when I couldn't sleep that night. Instead of doing my practice that I know helps and I know to do it, I didn't do it. Instead, my default was, let's get more to eat. But now it was time to really dive into the connection practice and get to the bottom of this thing that had been under the surface my whole life. So I'm going to show you my board now. I believe I've shown these to you before, but I'm going to just show you how this went for me. So when I was thinking about my trigger, the trigger was really, the wake-up call was getting so sick the morning after this binge. So I wrote my trigger when I binged on food and threw up. And so I had to get my feelings on the board, and I put lonely, overwhelmed. I was shocked. I couldn't believe that, I'd gotten to this point. I was embarrassed. I was confused, anxious. I felt guilty. I was afraid, like, oh my gosh, what have I devolved to here? And worried about it. So then I began to identify my unmet needs under these negative feelings. And big one was self-love, physical safety, freedom from this. Really, they'd been going on in lesser ways all my life. Clarity on how to resolve it. Self-connection, because obviously in some way there's a huge disconnect there. And seeing myself for who I am, I don't know if you can see that, seeing myself, seeing me for who I am, who I truly am, not this dysfunction, and my need to contribute, to be able to really contribute to a better world instead of being stuck in this kind of dysfunction. And then also identified the need for self-trust. Self-trust. So then I had to decide which of these is my main need. And I identified self-trust as my main need. So after that, my next step in the connection practice is to get an insight. And so if you remember, the way that we access our best thinking are what we call insights and what I call spiritual intelligence. That's really what I'm looking for when I do an insight, is I'm looking to connect with spirit, to my own spiritual intelligence. And so I close my eyes, I focus down into my heart, I breathe as if I'm breathing through my heart. And then I feel appreciation for something that's easy for me. And in my case, that's my dog, Molly. And so I fill my heart with those happy feelings with Molly. And then I ask myself quietly, silently to myself, what do I need to know about my need for self-trust in my relationship with food? And so I listened inside, and the insight came fairly quickly. The insight was to remember episodes when I couldn't trust myself with food. In other words, I needed to get really conscious about this pattern. I needed to own it. I needed to see it. And so I needed to remember how this had impacted my life over time. And so my action plan here was to make a list of those episodes. So that's what I did, friends. I started making a list of the times when I could remember that I had binged over my life. And the first one I remembered was when I was a young girl growing up on the farm in Missouri with Sherry. And when nobody was looking, I would eat way too much ice cream, or I'd get into a loaf of bread and eat way too much bread. So this started for me at a very young age. And then another one that Dennis will remember is when I came to Unity Village to teach the connection practice to the largest group of participants that I've ever had for that kind of course. We had 90 people there, and we had all these facilitators. It was a huge endeavor for all of us, a great teamwork. Everything was wonderful. But Sherry brought some trail mix and some nuts to our Unity hotel room. And so I ate a bunch of nuts. And the next day, if you remember, Dennis, I had double vision. And I wasn't sure. I never had double vision before, but you know, I'm pretty sure that was because of the nuts, because I ate too many nuts. And so we had to delay the start of my course at Unity Village with 90 people because I had eaten too many nuts the night before. Very embarrassing to admit this, friends. Like I said, I'm really making myself vulnerable here, but my purpose is to show you how you can go deep using this simple method of the connection practice. So then one last example is when I moved to California from Costa Rica, and I became the minister at Unity of San Jose. I bought a home that was about 10 miles from San Jose. So I was out away from my congregation. I was in a house all by myself, alone. And so again, I was having difficulty with not overeating. And I remember buying a carton of non-alcoholic beer. I have never had a problem with alcohol, but I like the taste of beer. And so I bought this non-alcoholic beer and drank the whole carton in one night. You know, this is the kind of thing that was happening. So those were three examples, the main examples you could say in my life. So now I had faced this. I'd owned it. Wow, I've been pushing this down all my life, not really willing to see it or own it. So now I had faced it. I owned it. I had my list of how it had happened, how it was a pattern over my lifetime. So now I needed to do the connection practice again. I needed to do what we call spiraling down into the issue, going deeper. And so I did another connection practice. And this time, my statement at the top was, before these episodes of binging, I remember. In other words, I wanted to remember what was going on in my life that suddenly I ended up having this dysfunctional behavior with food. And so I had many of the same feelings that I did the first time, the first board I showed you. But the main aha this time was, for the first time in my life, I named the feeling hurried. I usually felt some kind of pressure to get things done. I felt hurried. And so in realizing that I felt hurried, I was able to get to another need. I named this main need self-dignity. Because when you're constantly in a hurry, if you're frenetic, then you lose your dignity. You know, you're not present. You're always rushing to the next thing. And so this was a big discovery, the feeling hurried and my need for self-dignity. So once again, I needed to ask myself what I needed to know. I needed to get to the next insight. And so once again, I did my coherence, getting my heart and brain in coherence so I could hear my spiritual intelligence, heart focus, heart breathing, heart feeling of appreciation, and then asking, what do I need to know about self-dignity. And so what came to me was another insight. And again, by the way, these are insights I've never had before, but the insight was, remember episodes of feeling hurried and losing self-dignity. Once again, bring it all up, Rita Marie. Make it all conscious. Get clear on exactly what is, triggering you into this dysfunctional behavior. And so, like, once again, my action plan was to make a list. So I did that. I made a list, and I began with my birth story, which is something that Dennis may remember too, and certainly my sister has heard this story. But the bottom line of it is that, well, when I was originally a Unity minister here in Costa Rica, and we lived in a different place at that time, and on a Sunday morning, I realized everything was ready. Everything was just perfect, but I still felt hurried. Now, I didn't name that feeling at that time, but I was feeling like, frenetic, like, what more can I do? What do I have to do to get ready? And I said to my husband at that time, I said, I just realized I feel this way, this anxiety, like I've got to go all the time. And like right now, like there's no reason for that feeling. It's irrational. And it's almost like I've got this big hand pushing me on my back, like just pushing me all the time to hurry and get it done. And so that was the first time I really realized that I became conscious that I had that going on inside myself a lot of the time. So that was back in probably 94, something like that. So anyway, after that, I had a conversation with my mother. I was in the United States and we were at a Red Lobster. And I don't know why I thought to ask my mom this, but suddenly I said, Mom, you've never told me the story of my birth. I'd like to know what happened when I was born. And she says, oh, well, the doctor who attended your birth, he was a minister. And you were born on a Saturday, and he had some kind of event at church that he had to get to. And so he was really in a hurry. He was really needing to get to church on time. And so, golly, he pushed and he pushed and he pushed on my stomach till it was black and blue, trying to get you out of the womb. So when my mother said that, I felt this huge sob wanting to come up. And I said, Mom, I need to go to the bathroom. So I went off to the bathroom and I let that sob out. And that was a huge awakening as to why I felt this hand on my back still pushing me so many years after my birth. So I realized, okay, that's the initial hurry push kind of thing that that contributes probably in the very beginning to this neural pathway of I have to hurry to survive. If I don't hurry and get out and get done what people want me to get done, I'm going to die, basically. And so I looked at that as one of the issues in my life. And then also, of course, my mother. My mother was a chop, get it done kind of woman. She was constantly pushing, just like push. Here's the do list, get it done. And so her behavior was in alignment with my birth situation. And so I have seen two different pictures of myself as a young baby, like, I don't know, I was maybe 3 or 4, and I'm sitting on my mom's lap, and I'm like this, hand in mouth. So I was still feeling this anxiety constantly around my mom that I wanted to eat my hand. And so that was another awareness that I brought up as I processed this insight. And then, of course, friends, as you know, if you've all grown up in the United States, what kind of a culture do we have? we have a culture of chop, chop, get it done, don't we? We're happy when people get it done and we get results, we get happy. And so all of this emphasis on, you're worthy when you get things done. So my culture reinforced my birth and my mom. And then, I discover while I'm here in Costa Rica, I discover my connection practice mission in life. I'd always had this quest to be a peacemaker since I was 10 years old. I wanted to be an authentic peacemaker. So then I discover this synergy between empathy and insight. Now I've got a mission. But what do I bring to that mission? I bring this unhealed stuff about hurrying. And, if I don't get it done, I'm not worthy and I am going to die, basically. And so I brought some of that energy into bringing connection practice into the world. Of course, there was also the spiritual passion of it, the spiritual aha and the joy and the wonder of being able to have a clear purpose. All of that was, my spiritual identity. But then there was this other part that was also driving me, this unhealed, hurry, get it done, Rita Marie. And I knew that I could not really walk my talk of embodying connection if I had that under the surface. So always in all these years that I've led the connection practice, there's been this underlying guilt that, you're not really authentic. You're not really walking your talk because you've got this thing that, this pattern of overeating and hurrying and so on that is not clean. It's not healed. So that's what I got when I processed this last insight. And then I realized, okay, I really am in touch now with the feelings and the needs. I understand my need for self-trust in my relationship with food and my self-dignity in relationship to hurrying and getting it done. Okay, I'm clear now. I'm connected to my deepest needs. But now I need more insight. I really want to nail this time. I want to be free of this. And so I went back into insight. And so after I made the list of memories, then I asked myself, what do I need to know about these memories? In other words, what do all these memories of being pushed reveal to me? What happened as a result of all of those experiences? And what I realized is that I had come to believe that the body simply did not matter. When I was born, my body didn't matter. What mattered was getting it done. There was no, let's take care of that body as we go through this process. No, it was like chop, chop, get it done. And throughout my life, I'd gotten the message that the body didn't matter. And so then I asked my next insight question. And when I did my insight on that, the question was, what do I need to do to shift this belief that the body doesn't matter? I need to know exactly how to shift this belief that has been rooted in my neural pathways. I need to know how to shift it. What do I need to know in order to do that? Well, I was surprised at one thing that came up. In my life, I have had a very strong past life memory, and I've had a reading that confirmed this past life memory that I was at the crucifixion of Jesus. It's really strong, and I've learned a lot from that. I've come to understand why I have that memory and what can be gained from it. But when I looked at it this time, I realized that in seeing the crucifixion, at that moment, the message I got was, oh, well, ultimately the body doesn't matter. There it is on the cross, and all that really matters is spirit. So the body doesn't matter. that was an impression from a past life. So I was amazed when that came up. And then also, at the same time that I got the message that, oh, you'd formed this belief the body doesn't matter, in this insight, what came to me is, yeah, but now wait a minute, Rita Marie, you need to question that belief, because Jesus healed bodies, right? So the body must matter because Jesus healed a lot of them. You know, he took his time to connect with people and heal people. And so the body does matter. And not only that, but from all accounts that we know, Jesus was a healthy being, healthy in a human body until he had the crucifixion experience. And so he modeled complete health and healing bodies. So there's something there to understand and to do away with that belief that was formed in a past life out of that horrendous sight. And so basically what I came to is, yes, Jesus laid that beautiful body down when it was no longer needed, but he needed it when he was in the human life. It mattered when he was in the human life. So that's how I came to resolve that, which was a very deep awakening. And then also I thought about Myrtle Fillmore. I was talking earlier about her when we were just chatting before the message here. And, you know, Myrtle didn't have a complete healing until she got the insight while she was in meditation that she was swallowing her feelings and it was making her sick. That's literally what she says in her book, How to Let God Help You. She said, I'm swallowing my feelings and they're making me sick. And so in remembering Myrtle's experience, suddenly I'm going, oh my gosh, I'm swallowing my feelings by overeating and they're making me sick. And so that was another insight that came as I searched for clarity around this. And then lastly, as I was in this state of memories coming up and insights coming up, what came up was a memory of being in the Unity Seminary. I had a wonderful teacher named Susan Downs. I'm guessing, Dennis, you remember Susan. Well, one day Susan shared a transformation that she'd had. She said she'd been a smoker all her life. And then one night she had a vivid dream where in the dream there was this beautiful white temple, but she saw it was just filled with black smoke coming out the windows, out the door, everywhere. And it was blackening the walls of the temple. And she said when she woke up, she knew, you know, it was about her smoking, and she quit cold turkey, and that was it. So when that memory of her telling that story came to me, then suddenly I also got an image of my own body, my body temple. And what was coming out my body was undigested food, or not undigested, but digested food. I mean, it still looked like food, but it'd been chewed. Okay. So it was coming out the door, coming out the windows. You know, my body was just trying to throw off this extra food. And so what I realized from that is that when we are doing something like smoking or overeating to our bodies, there's no room for the experience of spirit. It's all about that. It's all about the smoke or the extra food. You know, your focus is on that addiction. And there's not even room for spirit to thrive in this beautiful temple that's intended to be. So that image of my body temple, throwing off the food, stuck with me. And suddenly I felt free. Suddenly, that sense of being pushed all my life, it was like the hurry, the push is suddenly gone. I couldn't, you know, explain exactly how it happened, but I just noticed I felt this big absence of a part of me that had been with me since birth. So that was a huge relief that I got to some freedom from this. And at the same time, I knew that this was a neural pathway that had been formed really since birth, that, it's my default to overeat when any kind of stress, any kind of uncomfortable feelings. Well, let's just default to eating. And so I knew I'd need to stay conscious and, not just act like this was it, like that just getting to the insights was enough. No, I had to get an action plan, which is the last step on the connection practice board is an action plan. And so my action plan was to count calories the rest of my life. Because I know that when I do count calories on my phone, I have this nice little app called Lose It on my phone. And when I use it, I'm good. I have a limit and I'm good about staying within the limit. But if I don't do that, then my default goes into play. So it's like, okay, I see it. I faced this. I've looked deep at the causes. I've looked deep at the solutions, the insights that lift me up. And so I accept that I need to do this the rest of my life, just like a diabetic having to face that they have to eat a certain way the rest of their lives. And sometimes it's hard for them. Hard to stick with that limited diet, or an alcoholic who has to take methadone to keep from drinking. And if they skip the methadone, it becomes a problem. So it's like facing it and self-acceptance. Okay, somehow this was part of my human experience. I faced it. I've healed it at depth, and I'm taking actions that are going to keep me on that path. So as I've done that, friends, some interesting things happen, some outcomes. One is that at first I felt lost. Like, I'm used to being at work every day doing the connection practice, and I'm used to get up, go, go, go. And suddenly this big part of me that had been driving me all my life, the push, it wasn't there anymore. Ooh, how am I going to get the work done? So I had to get used to that. It was quite a experience of feeling lost, like part of me was gone. But now, the spiritual purpose, the meaning is now completely in charge. And it's not that I don't have any moments of craving or wanting to do that again, but I haven't. And so I've been able to stay on track and have my spiritual self in charge. So that's been quite part of the experience. Another part was I've become super sensitive to any time when I feel hurried. And my husband and I started playing pickleball together. We have an event center that's big enough for a pickleball size court, a regulation court. So we started playing pickleball every morning from 6 to 7, which was fun and wonderful for my body. But what I noticed is every time it was my turn to serve, I was anxious because Ricardo was over there waiting on me. Every time I went to serve, I felt that hurry. Oh, I got to pick up the ball off the ground and I got to get that serve done because somebody's waiting on me. And so I became super sensitive to that urge to hurry. So I was able to stop that. I caught it. And then the next day after catching it, the first day, next day, I had worked on that through my connection practice. And I realized I'm going to say, I take the time I need in my life. I take the time I need in my life. And so it worked. I stopped having that anxiety about feeling like somebody's waiting on me. I got to hurry. So that's gone. So I'm finding so much freedom and so much more self-awareness now that I took the time, friends. This whole process and this connection practice took about 3 hours for me to get to the bottom of it. And so lastly, I have been aiming to stick with this habit of counting calories, and I've done pretty well overall. But, when life starts getting super busy, then sometimes I've noticed, I let it go out the window for, a few hours or a day, and I get right back on it. And so I just have realized that I have to, it's just like an alcoholic needing to put their sobriety over everything, that I need to put that habit of counting calories over everything, because if I don't, then I start to default and devolve. So my friends, that's an example of how you can unite your empathy and your insight to resolve everyday challenges and deep wounds, the need for deep healing. So now I find I'm leading the connection practice with a clean heart, with deeper confidence, and with no guilt that I am not walking my talk. Now I'm completely present to my mission without anything dragging me down. And I know that you can do the same with any challenge or addiction in your life, that by getting connected, by using your own innate strengths of empathy and insight, that you too can resolve these kinds of challenges in your life. It takes some time to spiral down into them, but we have the wisdom within us to do it. So if I can be of supportive on that spiritual journey, I am happy to do it. I'm here for all of you. Thank you very much.